Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. Today we're going to have a more informal conversation about graduate school. You know, a lot of the videos out there on YouTube about graduate school are great for getting you into graduate school, but they don't tell you what a miserable experience you're in for once you actually get into the program. They don't really give you good advice, too, on moving your career forward. So what I want to do is do a two-part series talking about what I did really well in graduate school, which is what we'll talk about today, and a separate video talking about what I did wrong in graduate school. And there was a lot. There was a lot. But anyways, today we're going to focus on the happy stuff, and let's do that. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. So I think one of my greatest successes in graduate school was that I was just always there. Now understand that this was kind of dumb luck. First off, I lived way out in the country, about 30 minutes away. I didn't have internet, I didn't have great heat, I didn't have great cooling, and honestly, it was kind of nice to be able to work in the office because it had all of those things. Plus it had a bathroom, it had sodas nearby, 25 cents in a vending machine. Boy, those days have passed us. All sorts of cool opportunities too to be able to maybe get free food at some, College of Law events, things like that. So I worked at the office every day. I would get there about 9 o'clock and then I would generally work until 6. Now it's funny because this overlapped with the professor's schedule. They would come in generally closer to 9:30, 10 after their first classes. They would get their mail and then they would turn left and go down the hall and they would always walk right by the lab that I was working in. And I chose that lab because it was quiet and frankly, no one ever really used it. So it was a place that I could sit and do everything that I needed. Sometimes I was working, sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I was listening to the Rough and Tumble. You should check out their album. I'll put a link in the description below. But nonetheless, the professors always saw me. In fact, years later, my dissertation chair told me that all the professors thought that I was this amazing hardworking person because I was there when they got there and I was still there when they left. Granted, they didn't know I waited to 6 o'clock to leave because the traffic would be less bad taking the highway back home. So it was really just coincidence. But I was always present in the department. Same goes too if there were events in the department. Even if there wasn't free food, I would be there. Although if there was free food, I would be there twice with a bag taking stuff home. That's a whole separate video right there. But for me, I was always present at anything that was happening. Symposiums, job interviews, candidates, people coming to speak, whatever it was that the department was doing, even if they were remotely related to it, I was there and present. That let the department know that I was part of the program, and the professors all knew me by name as a result. Even the professors that I never took a class with knew who I was. I was kind of like the ghost of the McClung Tower in some small way. Oh, that'd be a cool book. But that was a big success for me, was being present. So I hand that free advice to you. Being present is one of the greatest things that you can do in graduate school once you get in the door. I think one of my other great successes was that I really just made myself useful to all the faculty. You know, it's really funny. I did a lot of jobs in that department. I was their computer person for a while. I painted offices. I took cabinets down. I replaced them. I did janitorial stuff. I fixed computers from time to time. I organized one of the professor's libraries that was just in a bunch of boxes. I mean, I did so many different things in the department and I always got paid for it. It wasn't a lot of money, but I was totally dirt broke poor. My first year, I didn't have a stipend at all, so I was entirely dependent on that money. And then even later years when I did have a stipend, getting that little extra cash was really super helpful to me. I even did stuff beyond that. If professors needed their dog walked, I did that a couple times. I helped faculty move in and out of houses a couple times. I even house sat a house one winter, which was actually great for me because I needed a place to stay then, so it all worked out. Thanks again, Steph. You changed my life. But nonetheless, these were all things where I just tried to make myself useful to faculty. Along the way, all of them came to know me as being a very dependable person, someone they could trust, and they could rely upon. And so later on, when I was in my PhD years, little projects would pop up, like they needed some survey stuff, or they were doing a data project, or they were working on this or that. And my name would get tossed in there, and I got to be involved in that. And those were some critical formative experiences for me as a researcher. I learned so much from those scenarios, and it all came from the fact that I just desperately needed money those first 2 years and would really take any little job to help survive. But being available and being useful to the faculty really made things a lot easier for me. Compare that to being difficult to the faculty, making their lives harder. You don't want to do those things. You want to be the person that's reliable, useful, and dependable, which by chance was me. As a first gen student, I accidentally created a lot of mentorships. As a first gen, I had no idea what I was doing. I was way over my head in graduate school. I probably didn't even belong there in some ways, or maybe I feel that I didn't. Maybe that's a sign that I'm a first gen, right? Um, but with me, I needed those professors to give me that extra sense of what should I be doing. It started with me basically following my professors back to their offices after classes and just talking about what we had learned in lecture, asking questions. And every once in a while, I would drop in that question, hey, by the way, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me what I need to be doing as a graduate student? What are some of the things that I should be thinking about? What are the books that I should be reading? What knowledge do I need to be getting so that I can be you one day? And they were happy to oblige. They would send books home with me. They would tell me, hey, you need to think about taking this class next semester because it's being a great fit for you. We even kind of organized my committee long before I started on my dissertation, largely on kind of building these mentorships and thinking about the people that were willing to take me under their wing and work with me. And I was really fortunate in the sense that I had a lot of faculty that were willing to do that. They supported me growing into the professor that I am today. And if I'm being honest, I think they did a pretty good job, especially with my choice of hats and sweaters. I can't take credit for doing this one. This was total dumb luck. But I had a massive regional and even national network of sociologists that I knew and had worked with in some capacities because of one of my jobs. You may know that I worked with the Southern Sociological Society for 6 years while I was in graduate school. I basically was their webmaster, and I ran their websites, and I ran their meetings, and just organized stuff. I answered emails. I built their website, all sorts of things. And that was a really amazing job for me. But along the way, I also got to know a lot of people that were above and beyond my campus. I got to work with amazing faculty around the United States. And I will say that on my first job on the job market, I actually got that in job partly because people knew me from the Southern Sociological Society. Even today, people will recognize my name but not understand why they recognize it in sociology circles. And then if it's at Southerns, I'll say, well, I used to be the webmaster. And they're like, oh, you're that guy that sent me all those emails. Yes, I remember you. Thank you so much. So it's kind of been a fun part of my career. I still work with Southerns today. I encourage you to join. If you're a sociologist, it makes perfect sense. Our undergraduate and graduate memberships are very cheap. So go check that out. I'll put a link below. But with Southerns, it gave me a chance to get a very wide network. Now, that may not be possible for you, but I will say this. If you find an opportunity that as a student, you can work in something like Southern Sociological Society, SWS South is another good example of that one. Any of these organizations that can put a student in and have them involved in that membership, the committees and so forth, do it. This is an excellent example to meet people, an excellent opportunity to get to know people that you would not have met otherwise. So, can't say enough for that. And also, let me say to the Southerns, I appreciate you making me who I am today. I wouldn't be here without you. I think one of my successes is also something that came from one of my faults. In my other video, I talk about how I came in thinking that I wanted to be a theorist as a profession and ended up coming out as basically a quantitative researcher because that's what I was good at compared to what I thought I was good at in theory. I wasn't, I was very rigid coming in about wanting to be a theorist, and that caused some problems in that I ended up changing into quantitative research, basically like, I guess, my first year of my PhD officially. And by then, I couldn't really complete some of the statistics certificates that I would have done otherwise. But that said, I wasn't afraid to change. I was okay with the idea that I would change paths from being a theorist to being an OLS person that just does regression and stuff like that. I feel confident in that now that that was the right decision. But I also have seen many graduate students who are now PhDs over the years who forced themselves into a very specific field that they were either told was right for them or they originally felt, but maybe found out later they weren't all that good at it and they stayed in it. And because they weren't willing to maybe take some other options, it's really hurt their career over time. Nothing in a bad way, but it's limited some opportunities about things that they maybe were really good at. So I always like to think about the fact that we have to be flexible in graduate school. It's a big turbulent period of change that you can't really depend on anything being static from day to day. So you have to be able to be comfortable with change in graduate school in general, but be also comfortable with the idea that what you came in doing doesn't have to be what you go out doing. Likewise, I'm also a person that in general drifted away from what my dissertation topic was compared to the jobs I do today. My dissertation was on U.S. ethnic niches and immigration theory. This was something that was really exciting for me. I did tons of quantitative research with that, even though it had theory in the title. But once I got out of there, I really turned back to my deep interests in Central Appalachia, political economy, my book on the Red River Gorge rock climbing community. I'll put a link below, and so forth. So be confident that you can make a change and it's going to be okay. Just take your time, figure out what's right for you, and go with it. For my last piece of advice, it's easy. Don't quit. The biggest thing that I did well in graduate school was that I never quit. And I know that sounds dumb, but let me explain this. With graduate school, it's really a long series of like a marathon with you solving problems as you go. You run a mile and then they stop you and have you answer questions. And there's this premise in graduate school that you have to answer those questions perfect and everything has to be right and it all has to go smoothly. And you do have to get through those problems, but you don't have to be perfect about them. In fact, for almost all that stuff, they will give you feedback on what happens to be missing or what needs to be fixed. Even your dissertation defense, they're going to have things that you have to go back and fix. I had a pretty decent amount. I had like maybe 2 weeks of work to go back and fix after my dissertation defense, but that's okay. That's kind of how graduate school works. The problem is that lots of folks hit those problems, they don't satisfy themselves in terms of answering them or dealing with them, and they just quit. And that's the worst thing that you can do, because if you quit, you'll never go back. But if you keep going, if you can push through these things, you're going to be fine. They will force you across the graduation stage at some point if you stick around long enough. In fact, I feel like I have seen cases where folks have worked on their PhD for 10 years, and at some point they're like, you just got to go. You just got to graduate. Here's your defense. Okay, here's your diploma. You're done. Go ahead. Please leave our department now. But they still call them doctor. My whole point here is don't quit. Stick with it. Now, there may be situations where for medical reasons you need to take a semester or two off, and that's fine. That's a different scenario, and I'm happy to do a video on that if anyone's interested. Leave a comment below. But what I am telling you is under no circumstances do you quit. You stay in graduate school, you will finish graduate school. I promise you that. All right, folks, 6 things that I feel like I did well in graduate school. As a professor today, I feel like I've done a great job. I've got an awesome book out. I've published 50 or so papers. I've done 70 plus economic impact studies, have those big grants in there. I've done all the things that I need to do, and I'll be a full professor within the year. I feel like I did well, but it all goes back to some of my successes in graduate school. Take this advice and run with it. And likewise, if you've got questions about graduate school, leave them in the comments below. I enjoy chatting with you. That's all I got today, folks. We'll see you next time. Go check out the Rough and Tumble. They're awesome. I'll put a link below.